For 3 decades, Johnny Carson dominated late-night television as the host of The Tonight Show. He was known for his polished professionalism and unflappable demeanor, always ready with quick wit and perfect timing. But even the master of late night occasionally found himself caught off guard by unexpected moments that became television history. One of the most legendary incidents occurred in April 1965, when Ed Ames, who played Mingo on the television series Daniel Boone, came on the show to demonstrate tomahawk throwing. The segment started normally, with Ames explaining the proper technique while Carson listened. A wooden figure was set up as a target, and Ames prepared to throw. What happened next became one of television's most iconic moments. The tomahawk landed squarely in an unfortunate location on the wooden figure, causing the studio audience to erupt in laughter. Carson's reaction transformed a funny mishap into television gold. He completely lost his composure, doubled over with laughter for nearly 3 minutes. When he finally recovered enough to speak, he delivered a perfectly timed joke that sent the audience into fresh hysterics. This moment was special because it showed Carson's genuine, unfiltered reaction, allowing viewers to see him completely lose control in a way that television rarely captured. Carson was meticulous about his set, including a wooden cigarette box that he treasured. When Don Rickles accidentally broke it while guest hosting in October 1973, Carson mentioned the damage on air the next night. A few months later, Carson learned that Rickles was filming his sitcom on a nearby NBC soundstage. In an unprecedented move, Carson decided to interrupt the live taping with cameras in tow. The crew grabbed equipment and ran across the studio lot. Carson burst onto Rickles' set during an actual taping, catching him mid-scene in his Navy uniform. Rickles looked genuinely shocked as Carson stormed in, demanding satisfaction for the broken cigarette box. The moment showcased their genuine friendship, with Carson willing to be the butt of the joke and break his own show's format for spontaneous comedy. As Carson's 30-year run approached its end in May 1992, the final episodes became increasingly emotional. On the penultimate show, Bette Midler appeared and announced she wanted to sing something special for the departing host. She began a tender rendition of a classic song about last calls and goodbyes, singing directly to Carson. The camera caught something remarkable, tears welling in the eyes of television's most controlled personality. For a man known for emotional restraint, this public display was unprecedented. Throughout his career, Carson had maintained a certain distance, but in this moment, the wall came down completely. When Midler finished, Carson leaned forward and kissed her hand, then looked into the camera and simply said he couldn't top that. The moment became one of the most authentic in television history. Throughout his tenure, Carson welcomed countless animal experts with exotic companions, and these segments were always unpredictable. During a 1979 appearance by animal handler Joan Embry, a capuchin monkey decided Carson's perfectly styled hair looked like an interesting playground. Without warning, the monkey launched itself onto Carson's head. Rather than panicking, Carson remained perfectly still with a look of resigned amusement as the primate thoroughly disheveled his carefully styled hair. When the monkey finally returned to its handler, Carson looked into the camera with his hair sticking up in all directions and delivered a perfectly timed quip. The moment showcased Carson's ability to find humor in completely unplanned disasters without ever losing his cool. When Steve Martin appeared in 1980, he was already establishing himself as a pioneer of absurdist anti-comedy. He announced he would perform a magic act and proceeded with one of the strangest performances ever seen on the show. Martin's routine featured him pretending to pull various objects from his pants, including eggs, a salt shaker, and a ringing telephone. By the end, Carson was doubled over, genuinely caught off guard by Martin's commitment to the bizarre bit. The moment was special because Carson took visible delight in being surprised, feeling like a regular audience member rather than someone who knew what was coming next. Robin Williams' appearances on The Tonight Show were exercises in controlled chaos. Williams, with his manic energy and lightning-fast improvisational skills, simply couldn't be contained within Carson's usual interview framework. He would launch into rapid-fire impressions, leap from his chair to demonstrate physical bits, and transform Carson's desk into an impromptu stage. Producers would panic in the control room, unsure where the segment was heading, but Carson would wave them off and let Williams take over. These appearances became legendary because they showed Carson willingly surrendering control to Williams's frenetic genius, content to serve as an audience member rather than a host. When Frank Sinatra appeared in 1976, Don Rickles was also on the couch. With Sinatra seated next to him, Rickles launched into one of his trademark roasts, treating the legendary singer with the same irreverent disrespect he might show any audience member. The camera caught Carson's nervous laughter and genuine concern about how Sinatra might respond. Sinatra was known for his temper, and few performers were willing to risk his displeasure. When Rickles grabbed Sinatra's knee and joked that he needed a ride home, Sinatra burst into genuine laughter, appreciating being treated like any other target rather than being handled with kid gloves. The moment represented it a rare instance where Sinatra allowed himself to be publicly roasted without repercussions. During a 1977 appearance, Dolly Parton engaged in playful banter with Carson. As the conversation continued, Carson made a comment about Parton's low-cut outfit that would become one of the most talked-about moments in the show's history. The studio audience erupted in a mixture of gasps and laughter. Parton, ever the professional, laughed it off with characteristic grace. The comment generated enormous viewer mail, with some finding it refreshingly honest, and others criticizing it as inappropriate. The incident revealed changing standards of television and public discourse, capturing a moment when television was still figuring out the boundaries between candor and respect. Bob Hope was a comedy legend whose career spanned decades, but by the 1980s, a troubling pattern had emerged during his Tonight Show appearances. Hope, then in his late 70s and early 80s, would arrive with dated material, often reading jokes from cards and seeming disconnected from the audience's reaction. Carson, himself a master of comedy timing, was forced to pretend Hope's material was landing better than it actually was. The most awkward appearances occurred when Hope arrived with jokes that felt stale and disconnected. As Hope continued reading from his cards, oblivious to the tepid response, Carson's face showed a mixture of professional courtesy and genuine discomfort. Despite private frustrations, Carson always treated Hope with public respect, understanding comedy's traditions and his own place within them. Jimmy Stewart was a frequent and beloved guest, and in 1981 he mentioned that he had written a poem about his dog who had recently passed away. Carson invited him to read it, likely expecting a light-hearted tribute. Instead, Stewart delivered one of the most genuinely moving moments in the show's history. His poem started simply but gradually revealed deeper emotions about love, loyalty, and loss. As Stewart finished reading, Carson was visibly moved and seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Carson didn't try to cover with a joke or move quickly to commercial. He gave the moment the respect it deserved, showing the audience it was okay to feel something. The segment became one of the most remembered from Carson's entire run for its simple human truth about love and loss. Joan Embry of the San Diego Zoo was a regular guest, bringing exotic animals for Carson to interact with. During one appearance in the late 1970s, she brought a large Burmese python. As she explained facts about the snake, it began moving more actively than expected, suddenly slithering off the desk and heading toward Carson. His reaction was immediate and unfiltered. He leapt from his chair with remarkable speed, backing away from the approaching reptile with genuine alarm that sent the audience into hysterics. Once the snake was safely recaptured, Carson returned to his chair, straightened his tie, and delivered a perfect punchline. The moment was endearing because it momentarily stripped away Carson's suave persona, revealing the same instinctive reaction many viewers would have had. George Carlin had built much of his career around challenging societal norms and pushing boundaries. During a 1983 appearance, Carlin delivered a seemingly innocent monologue with embedded subtle jabs at network censorship. Carson's knowing smile and quick glance toward the camera suggested he caught what Carlin was doing and was going to let it slide. Rather than creating distance, Carson's reaction showed personal appreciation for Carlin's cleverness in navigating restrictions. The moment represented a rare instance of television commenting on its own restrictions, with Carson, Carlin, and perceptive audience members sharing a joke that existed partly because of the very censorship it was critiquing. Dean Martin. Tin had built his persona around the image of a charming, slightly inebriated performer. During a memorable 1970s appearance, Martin seemed to lean particularly hard into his tipsy character, slurring words and delivering punchlines with exaggerated precision. Rather than reining Martin in, Carson became his straight man, setting up situations that allowed Martin to deliver increasingly outrageous responses. The segment reached its peak when Martin lost his train of thought mid-story, shrugged, and said it wasn't funny anyway. The audience erupted at this apparent moment of drunken candor. The brilliance was that viewers were never quite sure how much was an act and how much was real, creating electricity in the studio. One of the most predictable elements of The Tonight Show was Carson's nightly monologue, making it all the more surprising when it was interrupted in spectacular fashion during the early 1980s. Carson had just begun his jokes when Don Rickles, scheduled to appear later, began heckling him loudly from backstage. Carson paused mid-joke, then did something unexpected. He broke character entirely, turned toward the curtain, and called Rickles out. Rather than being annoyed, Carson seemed to enjoy the spontaneous chaos, bringing Rickles to the guest chair a full segment earlier than scheduled. The moment revealed Carson's willingness to abandon his carefully established format when something more interesting presented itself. Sammy Davis Jr. was one of the most multi-talented entertainers in show business, and during one 1970s appearance, a casual conversation suddenly transformed into an extraordinary display of his mimicry skills. Davis launched into rapid-fire impressions, seamlessly morphing into various famous performers, capturing not just their voices but their distinctive mannerisms with uncanny accuracy. Carson was genuinely laughing helplessly. Up top, it entertained as the audience. The moment was special because of its spontaneity, emerging organically from conversation and showcasing Davis's ability to access his vast repertoire instantaneously. Carson's reaction revealed his genuine appreciation for Davis's talents and his understanding of how difficult such perfect mimicry truly was. By the mid-1980s, Arnold Schwarzenegger had transitioned from bodybuilding to Hollywood action star. During one promotional appearance, he decided to inject unexpected humor by responding to Carson's first question with a lengthy answer entirely in German. Carson's confusion appeared genuine, but instead of getting flustered, he leaned into the absurdity, responding as if he understood perfectly and occasionally interjecting with nonsensical German-sounding words of his own. After several minutes, Schwarzenegger finally broke character and switched to English. The segment revealed Schwarzenegger's underappreciated comedic instincts and Carson's remarkable ability to find humor in potentially awkward situations by temporarily surrendering control. These moments throughout Carson's 30-year reign demonstrated why he remained television's undisputed king of late night. His greatest strength wasn't just his prepared wit and polished professionalism, but his ability to recognize when something spontaneous and unexpected would be more entertaining than the script. Whether laughing uncontrollably at a tomahawk mishap, showing genuine emotion during a farewell song, or playing along with a guest's absurdist prank, Carson understood that the best television often comes from abandoning control and embracing the unpredictable chaos of live broadcasting. These unscripted moments became the most memorable, revealing the genuine person behind the carefully crafted persona and creating television history that has endured long after his final broadcast.